Hello again, friends and family. Just a little quick video. I got a meeting I'm going to, but I just want to talk a little bit more about my exciting childhood. It was exciting up until it wasn't, but when my grandfather Parnell passed away, I got moved to my other grandparents' place, and it was different as night and day. They were in extreme poverty. They lived like they had lived 100 years before. They had dirt floors, no electric, no running water. We had an outhouse and a well with a pump, handle pump, and the water in the house. I used to scratch things in the dirt floor for fun. Grandpa was kind of a farmer. He had a big, big garden. We worked that. We had hogs and chickens and milk cows. And my job, of course, was to work all day long, every day, which turned out to be good for me in the long run. But as a little kid, it seemed pretty harsh. I was about 6 when I moved there, and we worked all the time. School was a reprieve for me because it wasn't in school I was working. I used to work the garden every day. We hauled the trash for the city. My dad had an old half-ton Ford pickup. Started with a push-button starter on the floor, and we'd go around and people burned trash in those days, and we'd go through the alleys and get the burnt barrels of ashes and dump them in the truck and haul them to the dump. My dad was kind of an entrepreneur. I didn't see him unless we were working together. He was always out chasing girls any other time. But we hauled the trash. We mowed the cemeteries and the bar ditches with push mowers. My job as a little kid was to pull the grass around the tombstones. There was no weed eaters then. I wish I'd invented it. It was invented by a 14-year-old boy, but I used to pull all them weeds by hand around those. We mowed yards for people as well. And at nighttime, they swept the streets of Coweta, Oklahoma, where I was. They swept the streets. Everything closed at 10 o'clock. So my dad and grandpa and I think we had other workers, I don't remember. They swept the streets with a push broom, and I dumped the metal cans over on the sidewalks and got the bottles out. They were recyclable. Got, I think, 2 or 3 cents a bottle out of those. And that was what we did every night. So going and getting home from school was work until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, every day. And Grandpa was a harsh taskmaster. He had a switch over every picture, and anything I did wrong, he grabbed a switch and wore me out with it. And he'd always say, "I'm gonna make a believer out of you, boy." And I guess he did. Something did, because I am. And he said, "I'm gonna cut the blood out of you." And boy, he did. He'd take my clothes off and whip me till I bled all over. Once I went to school with an eye patch on because he hit me in the eye accidentally, and got to school. The teacher said, "What happened to your eye?" I said, "Well, Grandpa Raymond hit me with a switch." The teacher said, "Well, you need to behave, don't you?" Whole different world then. Didn't matter. And just harsh times as a kid. We worked every day. We worked in the garden in the spring and summer. And we harvested. Grandma canned everything we grew, or chickens or hogs. One thing I never can figure out today is we took slop out to the hogs, and I don't know if we ever have any slop. I do know we had tater peelings. That was something they loved. And I'd go out and throw the slop to the hogs. They'd eat you just as well as they would the slop. You had to be careful not to fall in there. And I went and gathered the eggs, and we had a great big old Dominica rooster. Every time I'd go get the eggs, he'd flog me, and it hurt too. But one day I got me a big stick, and I went in there, and he come near me, and I knocked his brains out. I hit him as hard as I could, knocked him. I thought I killed him. Well, I didn't dare say nothing because I knew I'd get a whooping for that. So I went on and got the egg and come in. Next day I went back out there and he was walking around just fine. But you know what? He never flogged me again. Every time I'd come get the eggs, he'd walk the other way. I made a believer out of him. So I'd go get the eggs without getting flogged. And we milked the cows and made milk. My job at night, if we weren't sweeping streets or mowing, was to churn the butter. Churn the butter in a great big milk churn, about that high. And I churned that until we made butter. And we made buttermilk. And Grandpa had an ice box. We didn't have electricity. And you go get a block of ice from the ice house and put it in there. And he kept the milk and butter cool. And later, as I got older, I got a bicycle with a basket, and I'd deliver the milk bottles to the neighbors around and the butter, and pick up the old ones and bring them in. And Grandma washed them with soapy water, cleaned them out, and we put more milk and put them in the ice box to keep them cool. And I mean, everything we had, we grew or traded for. I didn't have anything else. For breakfast, we had homemade bread and gravy if Grandma made gravy. Sometimes we'd eat homemade bread with grease, great big old cast iron skillet. Grandma had that, what we call yeller grease, pig lard, and she'd warm that up and put a piece of that bread in there and turn it over, kind of toasty, soggy bread with grease, and that was breakfast a lot of times. And of course, we always had eggs too. And on Sunday, we'd kill a chicken and have chicken on Sunday. And it was my job to catch chicken and cut his head off. And I kind of enjoyed that part. And then we'd have a pot of water boiling and dip that chicken down in that water and pluck him and give him to Grandma, and she'd clean that chicken. We always look forward to fried chicken. Grandma also washed clothes with a great big tub that she boiled the water, put the clothes in it and boiled it. And as the air pockets come up, my job was take a stick, I'd push the clothes back down in that boiling water. I don't remember ever having any soap, just that boiling water. And then we'd pull them out of there. You got to be careful because that water would burn your hands. We'd pull them out with a stick, and Grandma had a crank thing that was a ringer. It was a ringer washer, but since we didn't have electric, all she used was a crank on the ringer. And she'd put them clothes in that ringer and wring them through, and then we'd hang them on the line to dry. And boy, in the wintertime, they'd freeze solid. Wasn't very efficient. You bring them in the house and let them thaw out. So that was basic life every day, living that life. I didn't know anything else as a kid. My dad would come around now and then and try to fix things up. He brought linoleum one year and told Grandpa he was going to put a floor in the house. And Grandpa and me, we rolled that linoleum out on top of that dirt. Dad was going to build wood in there, but we did that. So for a long time, we just had linoleum on dirt, and it's kind of humpy. And the weird thing to me was grass never grew before, but it grew after we had that linoleum. There'd be little sprouts of grass coming up through that linoleum. And kind of crazy life. But my grandfather was the driving force in all the businesses. He pushed my dad to work, and of course me too. And as I got older, I had a bicycle. I'd drag the lawnmower behind my bicycle and a gallon of gas, and I'd go around and mow lawns for $1 a piece. And I'd bring the money home, and my grandpa would take it, every dime I had, and put it in a metal hat box. And I'd ask him about some money one time. He said, "You got a clothes on, ain't you? Eating, ain't you?" "Yeah." "Well, shut up, you ain't got no money." Well, I didn't know that he was always saving that money in a hat box to give to me later. And one day my dad came by and talked me into putting that money in the bank. I had $148, I believe it was. So me and Dad went to the bank and put all that change in there, and I never seen it again. My dad paid a car payment with it, I learned later. But I was a working little dude. And I've always been that working guy all my life. My other grandpa taught me how to love and how to love God. Well, this grandpa taught me how to work. And I think I learned a lot from both of them. And I try to do that with you grandkids. I try to teach you about the love of the Lord and how much I love you and I spoil you. But I also make it work when you're around me. We mow grass, we do everything, pick up sticks. And every one of you have been good workers. I've been proud of all of you. What good little workers you are. And I think you're going to grow up to be both. Love the Lord, love people, and work hard. Okay, well, I'll see you next time.